Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Masters of the Universe Classics Evil Seed. That's right, this is the second figure in the Club 2000X subline from Mattel here in 2015. Another one of those standalone villains who has never had an action figure before right now. So let's go ahead and check him out. As you can see, he comes in that standard Masters of the Universe Classics blister card packaging. And when you flip that around to the backside, we get a look at some other figures in the Classics line, as well as a brand new bio for Evil Seed. So Evil Seed showed up in both the original Filmation cartoon series and the 2000X Mike Young Productions cartoon series, with vastly different looks. And I'm sure that there has been much conflict and debate on which version actually deserves to be made into an action figure, but fans of 2000X went out this time because we get that version of the character as he appeared in the Mike Young Productions cartoon series. They're completely different looking, and the one from the Mike Young Productions cartoon definitely had a much meaner look to him. And personally, this was always my favorite version of Evil Seed. Don't get me wrong, I am still a big fan of that big ol' artichoke head that we saw in the Filmation cartoon series, but I did always like the redesign of this character for Mike Young Productions, so I'm pretty glad that we got this guy in action figure form. When you take a look at him outside of the packaging, the first thing that I really notice about this guy is that he seems a little bulkier than you would expect. In the Mike Young Productions cartoon series, Evil Seed was a bit of a skinnier, lankier villain. Here he has basically been turned into the classic style, so he's been put on that standard buck, meaning he is a little bit more bulked out than normal. However, with all of the additional pieces that have been made on this guy, he still looks great, even though he is a little thicker than we might have expected to see him in action figure form. I think one of the things that the Four Horsemen did amazing with on this guy, much like with Calyx, is the fact that they were able to kind of manipulate the pre-existing buck by adding on some cool new pieces that really make him stand out as something different. One of the big components here is, of course, the piece that is over the torso. It's like an armor piece, but it is non-removable. So this is all glued in place here. It's attached, but it's designed in such a way that instead of looking like armor, it actually looks like his body with vines growing out of it. This is the way he appeared in the series, and you'll notice that instead of covering his whole torso, the piece only really covers his pecs here, and the rest of it is just vines that kind of work around the sides and to the back piece here. And then it does have this larger collar portion that comes up around the head. It actually looks pretty incredible. In addition to that, we do have some new pieces on here, such as the shoulders, which also have these spiky thorns or vines sticking out of them, and the forearms, which also have some vines growing out of it, as well as some of those thorn pieces. Another piece that I really like is the new pelvis piece here, which is really great. Does a very good job of not looking like a loincloth, since it is supposed to just be his body. And again, the vines continue off of this and down onto the legs. And it's really impressive the way this works, because the vines are attached to that pelvic piece, but they are loose pieces that kind of come down and wrap around the leg. But they're loose enough that they don't get in the way of the articulation, which we're going to take a look at more in just a bit. And then you notice that the kneecaps also have thorns sticking off of them, as the whole lower legs here and the feet are new pieces. So Evil Seed gets a lot of new parts here to really give him that cool plant-like look with all the thorns and the vines. It's pretty spectacular. And then it comes to that head sculpt, which is really, really great. I always like the design there. Love the way that the mouth is formed. And the entire figure is done in this green and brown motif. But I love how the eyes and the mouthpiece here has this bright red color that looks almost as if it's just glowing out of the plant. It's really cool looking. The paint deco on here is really nice. It's very clean, and like I said, he's mostly just this solid green with some nice brown on all the vines and thorns, but there is still a nice wash on there, so you can see there's some nice variance in the shading, specifically on the chest and everything, that helps to bring out some of the details of the sculpt, like all of the little creases and cracks and everything that is seen throughout his body. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at Evil Seed here. So I talked about this extra piece that is kind of like his armor that is attached to his torso that has this larger collar piece. You will notice that this collar piece is very pliable. So it's a bit of a softer, gummier plastic, and it doesn't really hinder the articulation of the head whatsoever. You'll notice that even when you kind of turn the head, the bottom of the jaw will kind of rub against this if you go too far to the right or left, but it is flexible enough for that moves around, so you can still pose his head around pretty good. And you can see it still rolls around on that ball joint quite nicely there. Of course, the head pops off, just like any of the other figures. You got a nice little ball joint there. So then you can just pop that back on in place, and it snaps in just like that. So we got those new shoulder pieces there. Again, the thorns on the shoulders are going to hit this piece that's on the torso, but it's flexible enough. It's not going to hinder the articulation. So I'm just going to go upwards, forwards, backwards. You got your standard swivels at the bicep. You got your standard single joint at the elbow. And you have swivels at the wrist. I do like how the vine here comes down over the wrist articulation, but as you can see, it's attached to the forearm there. Doesn't get in the way of the wrist moving at all. It's pretty cool. You got that standard torso cut there, so you can move the ab crunch up and down. You got the swivels at the waist. Again, I talked about this too. The vines coming off of that pelvic piece onto the legs. You'll see that that is kind of a loose piece that just hovers down, wraps around the leg there. So that way, the articulation still fully functions. You can move the legs all the way outwards. You can move them forwards and backwards there. You can swivel them at the thigh cuts, and this is all loose enough that it moves right along with it. Doesn't hinder the articulation. It works really, really well. Standard joint at the knee there, and then there's no boot cut articulation since he's not wearing boots, and you do just have a standard ankle articulation, no pins showing, which is really nice, so the feet can move forwards and backwards, no side-to-side movement though. So articulation, pretty great on this guy, and it's really neat the way that all of these new parts were added onto the figure, but they don't get in the way of any of your standard articulation joints. So Evil Seed includes 2 accessories. First of all, we've got this awesome little vine that's got the great little kind of Venus flytrap creature on the end of it. It's a really, really great design, and as you can see, the paint deco on there is just as nice as the regular figure, with most of it being brown like the vine seen on the figure, with some little green vines wrapped around it, great shading on there, and then we've got the little plant on the end that's got red inside of his mouth. It is curled, as you can see, and it's made of a bit of a flexible plastic, so that way you can get this thing to kind of wrap around his arm, and you can also get him to hold it into his hands, so that way you can pose Evil Seed as if he's shooting off this great little vine. Now, the second accessory isn't necessarily for him, and it's not even from the 2000X cartoon series. This is another Filmation artifact, straight out of the classic cartoon. It's a bit odd that it comes with a Club 2000X character, but hey, I love these Filmation artifacts, and I will take them anywhere I can get them. This is the Scepter of Power, as seen in the episode The Magic Falls. And while you can pose this with Evil Seed if you want, it's definitely much more fit for your King Randor figure, so that you can create some scenes right out of the cartoon series. So there you go, my friends. There is a look at the brand new Masters of the Universe Classics Club 2000X Evil Seed from Mattel. I'm pretty happy with this guy overall. I mean, the only minor gripe that I have is that he's a little bit bulkier than normal, but I totally understand why. He was done in the classic style, so he fits in with the rest of the figures, and again, the Horseman did an amazing job of manipulating the current Buck by adding some new pieces and really making him stand out as something very original looking. I like this version of Evil Seed quite a bit, and while yes, I would still love to get the Filmation version at some point, I'm happy to get this guy in the line at all. So as stated, he is part of that Club 2000X subscription, which is not part of the Club Eternia subscription. So it was one you had to sign up for separately, but he will also be available on MattyCollector.com in August, as long as the quantities are there. Special thanks to Mattel for sending Evil Seed along early so we can get an in-depth look at him. Happy hunting, my friends, and until next time.
Seed.